This video is meant to be an introduction to the Physics 1100 labs in general. I'll be talking a little bit about lab policies and general information. So first of all, how to get in touch with me. My name's Jennifer De Benedictis, and the instructions I'm about to give you are specific to me. So if you've got a different lab instructor than me, they might have slightly different policies. But anyway, I'm Jennifer. You can call me Jen, Jennifer, or Ms. De Benedictis. It's really not an issue to me. Email is a better way to get in touch with me. I've given you my office phone number also, but I'm not always there. And by the way, don't ever leave me voicemail at this phone number because I will never, ever, ever get it. So email is definitely a better way to get in touch with me. Now, my office is in room 3260, which is down here. Most semesters, the Physics 1100 labs are held in this lab here, room 3265, in which case you could just walk out the door across the hallway and my office is right there. However, some semesters the labs will be held in this room, 3290. So if that's the case, then you would go out the door, head down the hallway towards the rotunda, except instead of turning out towards the rotunda, you turn in the opposite direction, go around the corner, and that's where you find my office. I share it with other lab instructors, so you may or may not see me at the desk immediately inside the door. If you don't see me, then take a peek around these bookshelves. I may be tucked away at the back. So some general information about the labs. This handout you're looking at is something I will have given you in the first lab period, so if you missed it for some reason, just ask me to give you another copy. The labs are due at the end of the 2-hour lab period, and there's a schedule posted on the door of the lab room to say what lab we're doing each week. Generally speaking, the labs run in numerical order. We just do labs 1 to 11, all in order. Sometimes the course instructor will ask us to swap 2 labs around, but usually it's numerical order. You don't need a separate lab book for this course. Everything you're going to do is going to be done directly in your lab manual, and then that's what gets handed in for marking. You're going to be working in groups of 3, ideally, and maybe a group of 2 if we don't quite have the right number of students to give perfect groups of 3. And we've got kind of a different way of handling the marking. Everybody in the group does the work, fills in their book. Everybody hands it in, but I'm only going to mark one person's book. And yes, you will know ahead of time whose book it is, who's going to be marked. But I mark one person's book, and then everybody in the group gets that grade. So 3 people do the work, 3 people hand it in, one person's book gets marked, and then everybody in the group gets that grade, and then you cycle the roll. So the next week somebody else will be what's called the recorder, the person whose book is going to be marked. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, generally speaking, I will assign seating just because I want you to be happy with whoever you end up working with. So for the first couple of weeks, I'm going to swap you around to different lab groups. You'll work with different people each week. And then at the end of that 2 to 3 weeks, I will let you choose whoever you want to work with. And that's just so that you spend most of the semester working with people you're actually comfortable working with. That's important given that everybody in your group is going to get the same grades. I want you to be happy working with whoever you work with. The labs count for 25% of your total course grade, and there is a lab exam. So do look on the schedule. The lab exam is Lab 8. It happens in the middle of the semester. No, you do not have a second one that happens at the end of the semester. So there's one lab exam, Lab 8, that happens mid-semester. Now the pre-labs are a set of questions in your lab manual that are supposed to be done before the lab period starts. The lab manual actually says that if you don't complete the pre-lab before the experiment, you're not even allowed in the room. I don't actually do that. What I do instead is that I come around at the beginning of the lab period and I check for completeness. I just tell everybody, show me your pre-lab. You flip through the pages, show me that you've written stuff down on all the questions. And if you have, great. If you haven't, you lose all the marks for the pre-lab. Just you, not your partners. You lose all the marks. And that can be up to 30% of your lab grade, so it's a penalty that can really sting. So please have your pre-lab done before you come to the lab. I will check the pre-labs for accuracy when you hand the book in for marking. Exemptions. So if you have taken the course before, Physics 1100, and you got a lab grade of 70% or higher, that means you may be qualified for what's called an exemption, which would mean you wouldn't need to do the labs again. You could just have your previous lab grades submitted this semester as well for your current lab mark. So that would save you from doing the labs over again. So if you think you qualify, come and talk to me. You have to set that up in person. It doesn't happen automatically. The late arrival policy is that if you show up late by, say, more than about 5 minutes, then you're not allowed to join your partners. They'll have already started, and it's not really fair to them. So if you show up late, you don't get to join your partners. You have to work alone that week. And if there's not sufficient equipment for you to work alone, then you'll have to either come to a different lab section or possibly schedule a makeup lab, and there'll be a marking penalty for that. So the only penalty generally, though, if we have space, is that if you show up late, you have to work by yourself. The missed lab policy is a lot more draconian, so I want to stress this. The labs are considered part of the course requirements. If you don't do every single experiment, you fail the entire course. I just want everybody to be really clear on that. You don't get to ditch any labs. You must do them all or you fail the entire course. So if you miss a lab, perhaps due to illness, then you need to do a makeup lab. You should talk to me as soon as you can. Ideally, email me the same day you're going to miss the lab and tell me what's going on. Don't wait till the next lab period, though. Come and talk to me as soon as you're back to school, or email me the same day. The default is that you need to provide a doctor's note. Generally what I'll do is if it's the first time you've missed a lab, I'll say it's okay, you don't need to get me a doctor's note. However, that's something I will tell you. So email me and I'll email you back to say whether or not I want you to bring me a doctor's note too. So now I'm going to tell you about what to expect in the labs. So first of all, you will have a lab manual, and I want you to turn to page 1. We're going to talk about the roles that people in the groups play. I will also just pause for a moment and tell you that it's a good idea to put your name on the front cover in the upper right, just so that everybody's name is in the same location for my benefit. Also, grab a marker and actually write your name on the top and bottom edges of the lab manual's pages, so on the edges of the pages, on the top and the bottom. That's because when I hand back the books, they're in a huge stack, and it's easier to find yours if you've got your name written along the edge. You should bring a pen and pencil to the labs and also a scientific calculator. And what's going to happen is in the labs you're going to work in groups of 3s, ideally, and maybe a group of 2 if we don't have enough people. Page 1 has this explanation for what the 3 people in the group do. The reader, their job is to read the procedure, lead discussions, keep everybody on track, and finish your lab on time. So obviously everybody in the group should read the lab ahead of time, but the reader's job is to really be on the ball and to know what is being asked of the group in every question. The technician's job is to set up things, make sure the equipment's working the way it's supposed to, and coordinate with everybody else for taking the data. Again, everybody in the group should help with putting the equipment together and making sure you get good data, but the technician's the one who's sort of in charge of this. The recorder is arguably the most important person in the sense that theirs is the book that is going to be graded for marks. So their job is to record the data, summarize all the group discussions, and make sure everything is written out in full sentences. Everybody in the group has to fill in the book. If you're the reader or the technician, however, you can answer in point form, as long as you fill it in well enough to study from later. The recorder should fill it in very, very completely, because theirs is the book that is going to be graded, and everybody in the group gets that grade. So it's worth their while to make sure they do a good job of it. And then every week you're going to cycle through these 3 roles. So if you were the recorder one week, you'll be either the reader or the technician the next week. Now, I do ask that all 3 people in the group hand in their books. So even if you're not the recorder, you're still handing in your book. And I am going to just flip through the reader and technician's books to make sure you did fill it in completely, even if it's in point form. If you don't, then you alone would get a penalty for not filling in your book. So fill in your book regardless of whether or not you're the recorder. And do note that the recorder's pre-lab is the one that's going to be graded, and everybody gets that grade. So feel free at the beginning of the lab to look through the recorder's pre-lab and make sure you all agree that they got the answers right. Now, when your books are handed back, and I'll tell you where to get them in a moment, there's going to be a sheet of paper, a marking sheet, that's in the recorder's book. It outlines what the group did right or wrong in that experiment, and what you got or lost marks for. So I require everybody in the group the next week to sign that marking sheet to prove that they've seen it, and then it gets handed back to me. And that's just my evidence that everybody in the group read my comments. The lab books are going to be handed back in my office when I'm done marking them. So remember, I said my office is in room 3260. When you walk in the door, you'll see a short little bookshelf right in front of the door. When I'm done marking your books, I'm going to put them on that shelf, and you're welcome to come in anytime the door is open and grab your book off the shelf. and obviously you want to do that a little bit early so you can fill in the next week's pre-lab. Generally, I try to get them marked pretty fast, so you should be able to pick your book up the day after the lab for sure. Now, the way in which a traditional lab works is you would show up to the lab period, and your instructor would give you a little talk at the beginning telling you how to use the equipment and any safety concerns, and then you'd begin your experiment. Now, I found that that usually took me about 20 minutes, and you've only got a 2-hour lab period, so 20 minutes out of 2 hours is actually a big chunk of the time that you have to work. So I decided that what I would do instead is I would film those introductions, put them on YouTube, and then you can watch that video introduction before the lab period, and that effectively gives you another 20 minutes to work on your experiment. So chances are good that if you're watching this video, you're already on your course website for this lab. But just for completeness, I'll show you how to get to it. You go to courses.kpu.ca, which is the Moodle website, and you log in with your student number and your password. Once you're there, you should see a link for your Physics 1100 lab. So you click into that. And the way I've got this set up is that there is a clickable section for each experiment. So I can click on each of these and expand it or contract it. So as I said, chances are good that you're already on this page watching this video right here in this first clickable section. By the way, that handout that I was going over earlier in the video is down here at the bottom, so you can download a copy for yourself right now. So each experiment will generally have two things in it. It will have a video that you should watch before coming to the lab, maybe the night before the experiment starts, and you can do your pre-lab questions at the same time. And then underneath it, there'll be what's called a video completion quiz. So this is just a very short, simple quiz, 4 questions usually, that proves to me that you did watch the video and you're prepared for that week's experiment. So after watching the video and filling in your pre-lab questions, fill in this video completion quiz. And your reward for doing that is that I'll give you a 1% bonus on that week's experiment. If you don't watch the video, then my assumption is that you're not prepared for that week's experiment, and I may make you work by yourself because it's not fair to your partner. So watch the video to prepare for that week's experiment, fill in your pre-lab questions, and then fill in this video completion quiz. And you get a 1% bonus mark for filling in the quiz. So let me show you what one of these quizzes looks like. So you click on the quiz, and you say Attempt Quiz. It will give you a chance to back out, and you start the attempt. You're allowed 2 of these attempts, by the way. And then there'll just be a few simple questions, and you click whatever you think are the right answers. And I'm not going to try to get the right answers. I'll just fill in the first one for each of these to demonstrate how you do this. So you'd fill in what you think are the right answers. Click Next, and you can return at this point and change your answers, or you can submit them for your first attempt. And then it will tell you what answers you got correct or incorrect. You need to get at least 3 out of 4 correct in order to get your bonus mark, by the way. So I fluked out and actually got it. But if you needed to, you could also take another attempt. So you could finish your review and reattempt the quiz now that you know which ones you got wrong. So every week, go to the course website, click into the appropriate experiment, watch your video, fill in your pre-lab questions, and then fill in the video completion quiz to get your bonus mark. And remember, if you don't fill in the video completion quiz, there's a possibility that'll make you work by yourself that week.